How you doing? I'm sorry I'm a little late. I'm all wired up. I think I have my antenna here. Yes, yes. How long have you been here?
I've been around a while, back and forth. Terrific day. Gorgeous day.
Yes, it's nice. I like staying in the smoke here. I'm hungry. I can smell it.
Look at them. They are. Look at them. See the statue over the top?
Yep. And the eagle.
Mm. It's been one of those days, Cody, one of those New York days. And the street is just radiant. Everything's
only in the
summer.
Look at that. Look at the lady with the dog.
Wow. Nursing mother.
Come on, you get run over.
Come on. Let's go to 57th Street.
All right.
Photographs like these, street photographs, are not the kind that Joel Meyerowitz is best known for today. The work for which he's known today is color photography done with an 8x10-inch view camera, the plate camera as it was once known. Yet even among these view camera pictures, you can see the signs that street photography is where all of Joel Meyerowitz's work begins.
But you know, it's the small camera and the thousandth of a second that allow you to retrieve that intimacy out of all of this maelstrom going around. The fact that you can snip a thousandth of a second, and that in fact you learn how to feel your feeling about that thing. I mean, it's incoherent in general, but you're coherent. You've been working it long enough, and you begin to get a sense of what's necessary, you know, where the puzzle pieces are. And that thousandth of a second allows you to snip at it, you know. And then you get back what a thousandth of a second reveals, which is unbelievable. You know. It's teaching us how to see. And by reading this contact sheet or this roll of slides or whatever you get back out of your camera, you can tune yourself up finer and finer, like a good athlete. You can learn how to anticipate that thing is going to unfold in front of you at a thousandth of a second, and just maybe you'll be in the right place at the right time. Beautiful gesture on this man. Look at this.
They're going to kiss.
I think the fact that you could compress feeling into a thousandth of a second, and maybe feelings don't take more than a thousandth of a second anyway. I mean, when we get a sense of urgency for a feeling of love for somebody, or anger, or whatever it is, it rises like that, right? It's like your blood just jumps to that thing. And to have it in the street, and to have a camera that can command the immediacy of that feeling, it could trap. I mean, the feeling is even faster than a thousandth of a second, I think. Ooh, that, I want that. That's beautiful. I've always liked the notion that the camera is the stage, and that things are happening off stage, and that the theater has a kind of tension, you know, possible just because there's a frame there, and these events kind of come in from the wings, and I try to get as much of it in as possible to make that chaos felt inside of it, to make it interesting all over, so that you could read the picture not through the central event of that wonderful, graceful gesture, the kiss, the look, but read the event like you read the street. Oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. I mean, everything is of equal, even-handed interest, you know? And the frame pulls. There's a kind of tension in there from...
Let's see, one of the differences between the black and white and the color is that in the black and white, you can feel the acrobatics of the photographer, you or Cartier-Bresson. One of the things that you feel, part of that experience of the street that you get back from the picture, is the sense of the bobbing and weaving and twisting and turning. In the color, because you stand still more, it's more about simply what the street is giving off. What you feel is more of the body English in the crowd. Pictures tend to have more people in them, not a central event, more things that are interacting in a subtle way. You know, it's a different thing, but you know, they are. The pictures do get good. It takes longer looking at them.
They're very much a record of where you are, how you feel about where you are, and when you're standing there. I mean, they're very existential in that sense. The place is crowded, it's full of activity and life. Pictures have that energy in it. The place is empty and quiet and dead. You might begin to make pictures that are still. I mean, there are businessmen around, they're talking and gesturing, beautiful women going by, vendors, runners, people running. The tumult of the street is what New York City looks like in 1981. You stand here on this given day, look at that. A kind of wonderful ballet. I mean, there were two guys trying to come by here. That girl stopped for a second like an angel. You know, she was ready for flight some way. At the same time, there's everything around it, holding the space here.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
There are businessmen around, they're talking and gesturing, beautiful women going by, vendors, runners, people running. The tumult of the street is what New York City looks like in 1981. If you carried a camera, then a trip like this would make sense to you, you know? I mean, if what you were doing was making photographs, if that's what your life was, then you would be in touch with it. All I want from those photographs is that they carry and contain that sense of the street. I don't want to try and make, you know, incredible monumental gems out of individual photographs. I'd like one photograph to lead into the next, because my life is blended that way. One day leads into the next. One day I'm standing here, another day I'm making delivery downtown. So
no 6, 7 is there.
It's that way. It's always been there.
Yeah.
All the way.
I left it. You know, one of the things that makes a street photographer is somebody who's crazy about life on the streets and wants to be out there. There are a lot of people who are unnerved by the chaos around the streets. They're always more happy in their house, moving fruit around, or looking out the window, or controlling people. In a sense, I don't like the control. I want as much to happen, and as many gifts to be given to me as the street provides. If you don't have that attitude, you can't work on a street like this, because it takes a kind of endurance. You got to stand here day after day and be willing to believe something's going to come your way. You know, the pot of gold right here on the street corner.
Yeah.
If you don't think like that, you wind up getting frustrated. The street doesn't seem to provide. You know, you don't trust life. You got to love it, trust it, to be able to work in it.
Yeah. You have to take a chance too. I mean, the whole mystique of a studio is to is to get everything under control so that you don't make any mistakes, you don't waste any of your energy, any of your effort. The nice thing about the street is that even when you're working, even when you come out and photograph, it's taking a walk. It can't be anything more. As soon as you try and put more pressure on it, you blow it, you miss it. So if a picture gets by you, so what?
The first thing is that you want to go out and take a walk.
Hello, I'm Colin Westerbeck, or Cody, as Joel calls me. I first got to know Joel in the mid-1970s, at a time when he was switching from black and white to color. He'd always shot both, actually, but now he was planning to switch to color exclusively. To mark the transition, he was trying to put together his first book. This is the maquette he was working on then. The book was to be called Still Going, and was to be made up of work he had done since the late 60s. Some color, but mostly black and white. This book has never been published, but in a sense it is the central book in Joel's career. It was the summing up of the work that led to the View camera, and, thus, to the two books that have been published. Cape Light, which came out in 1978 at the time of Joel's exhibition at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, and, more recently, St. Louis and the Arch, also published in conjunction with a major show, this one at the St. Louis Art Museum, that capped several years of intense work. Joel's career might even be envisioned as a series of books. Just as Still Going has led to the two books of View camera photographs that have been published, earlier books by other photographers were, in a very real way, what led to Still Going. Henri Cartier-Bresson's The Decisive Moment, Walker Evans' American Photographs, and Robert Frank's The Americans. Although all three of these books are street photography, the pictures are very different in character and reflect photographers of very different sensibility. The diverse, sometimes contrary nature of these influences accounts, in part, for the complexities of Joel's own work. As Cartier-Bresson's 1952 book shows, he is the consummate street photographer. He virtually invented the art, at least where the modern hand camera is concerned. He is a man who retains his poise, his style as a photographer, under all circumstances. He responds to every situation with grace and wit. He takes a somewhat ironical view of life, but his irony is of a very gentle sort. He is a lover of life. He celebrates it. He shows us the human comedy. Walker Evans was, by contrast, a man of more dour temperament. The pictures in his 1938 American photographs don't lack humor, but they show him to have been a moodier man than Cartier-Bresson. It was perhaps to fit the variety of his moods that he worked not only with the hand camera, but, like Joel, with the View camera as well. Evans remained determinedly American. He loved the vernacular, the homemade, the human awkwardness of life. He could use his camera as an instrument of pitiless observation, but was always sensitive as well to the genuine spirit and feeling he glimpsed beneath the surfaces of American life. Robert Frank's photography is somewhere between Evans and Cartier-Bresson's. Although a European, Frank has lived and photographed primarily in America since the late 1940s. For his 1958 book, he used only the 35mm camera, which he wielded with the same deftness and dexterity as Cartier-Bresson. Yet his view of America was often as pessimistic as that held by Evans, who was his friend and sponsor. Robert Frank's was perhaps the most important influence shaping Joel's early work, because it was with Frank himself that Joel's career in photography began. As an advertising art director in the early 1960s, Joel supervised a job on which Frank was the photographer, and the experience of watching Frank work, even on this routine commercial assignment, inspired Joel to buy a camera and begin photographing himself. In the years that followed, Joel spent a great deal of time walking Fifth Avenue, taking pictures, learning his medium. In the process, he met other street photographers with whom he became close friends, especially Gary Winogrand and Todd Papageorge. And like his relationship with these photographers, that which Joel had with Robert Frank was always more than just aesthetic or professional. It was personal. This is Joel's own copy of Frank's The Americans. As you can see, he has looked through it so often that it has literally fallen apart in his hands. When he was doing the maquette for Still Going, he used to take out this copy of Frank's book and lay the pictures in lines on the floor, seeking once again in Frank's photography an inspiration for his own.
One of the differences, a subtle difference between that Bresson sensibility and Robert Frank is that Bresson was also calculating after a while. He was very agile and highly sensitive and aware. But he would pin himself in a place, position himself, and he knew enough to wait that the structure of a winding stair and a grouping of trees and the passageway for human life would be continuous. And Dolls to Donuts, two nuns were going to come by, and two little girls carrying flowers, and if he stayed long enough in the shadow of this building on the corner, he was going to get it. Robert Frank was riskier, more wide open, and he had more unexpected results.
Comes back to it comes back to a certain level of chutzpah that street photography takes too, because you're assuming that what's interesting to a viewer finally is your level of energy on the street. It's something you're telling him about yourself.
The novel works like that too, right? People write books and they think, well, what I'm interested in is possibly interesting to everybody. If I can only get it, so tense that when you read it, you can't put it down. And maybe it's a conceit on the part of photographers. But I believe that the novel, the photographic novel, is a possibility. Robert gave us the clue, before him Evans, with the idea that running continuous photographs together, made out of a sense of the whole, your view of the whole. You could make something that was not just a documentary, but it was a telling, piece of your life, torn out of your passion and your observation and your concentration. Without that, there's nothing. If you don't come out on the street day after day and pound it, you're not going to get pictures of the street. You can't just pay a visit to it.
Yes.
As if it's a field trip, I think I'll go off and I'll photograph Yosemite today. You don't do that. You go out every day and you pay attention to it. You pay your dues. I don't know what it was, but it was something very juicy about what was going on. Just there was a little bit of confusion.
Talking. It's partly the corner that the building meets as well
It's
as
like a
they
ship
meet.
coming up
Look at I love this. It's that.
Yeah,
all those all those hands stroking, backside stroking it. They make themselves into a little frieze by doing it, meeting at the corner like the walls, with the walls.
It comes down to risk, again and again. If you risk coming out, if you risk making pictures that aren't good, you might discover something in a photograph that's the key, the very doorway to your own interest. You might be out in the street, for 4 or 5 weeks in a row, and you look at the pictures and you're sitting on the same thing every day. A piece of time is somehow embedded in the photographs, like amber, like a fly in amber. You say, why? If you could ask the question, why do the pictures look like that? Why was I photographing that? You might learn something about yourself.
But I know that you will now stand on a corner when you shoot with color film. You used to move up and down the street more when you used black and white, when you were shooting at 1,000th of a second with a 400 ASA film. Is the new way of working? Look at this. It's my Uncle Herb.
I got to reload for a second. Let's just get against the wall here.
Okay. Oh, this is good for my back. Actually, take a little break. Every time you reload, I'll put my back up against the wall.
It's precisely that thing in the car, which is very seductive. And you can't not take a picture, but at some way, you have to push that aside and photograph it on the periphery instead of it as the subject.
Yeah.
And that's what you were asking before about cruising down the street like the Juggernaut. When I used to be involved in doing that with Gary Winogrand and Todd, Papa George, we'd all go out for the pleasure of being out together. I mean, strolling, you know, it's that whole boulevard mentality of going out for a stroll. But somehow the restraints of working with a small camera in color film began to push me back. You know, the ASA 400, the depth of field from 8 feet to infinity, allows you to snare everything. And you can do it on, you know, instantaneously. Color film is different. It has a different plastic description of things. It deals more with the whole volume of the image, the color of the image, the objects in this image. And I found that I had to back off, slow down a little bit, and begin to consider what the street looked like. I found that I had to accept what I was making photographs of. Otherwise, I would only push myself back into a position of making photographs in color about what I was making photographs in black and white.
Yeah.
Now, there's an argument there. Black and white and color, two different things. They express and describe different things. If I was resistant to that opportunity to accept change, I would be making the same pictures I always made, and I wouldn't have grown at all. I feel that by accepting the new pictures and trying to understand them and then trying to make value out of them, saying, what do these look like? I alienated a lot of my friends, you know, because they kept on saying, what are those pictures about? They don't look like your pictures. You lost your timing, you lost your space, you lost some understanding of the street.
Yeah.
What was happening is I was exchanging that for something else. I didn't quite know what I was getting. But you have to play it on the risk, otherwise what's the sense? You might just make Cartier-Bresson's photographs.
That's again you can see this in Robert Frank's work too. Again, to stand out there and have the patience and the trust in the situation that the pictures will give you back, that you don't have to know before you go out. What you're making pictures of is what differentiates, what makes street photography different. When we quit before, I was going to ask you about the plate camera. You know, you're talking about how you wait and see what the pictures give you back, and when you changed the color, it changed the way you had to behave, and you had to watch the pictures and see what you were doing because you don't want to anticipate too much. But surely with the plate camera, that was really a problem. It's so unspontaneous. Didn't feel a really... I mean, I think when I look at your pictures that the reason the plate camera pictures are interesting is because they came out of this. You spent 15 years doing this before you started with the plate camera. And yet, that disjunction, that bump, going over that bump, must have been much rougher than the bump going from black and white to color. How do you deal with that? What did you do when you first picked up the plate camera to fill that void where you could just go out and wield a hand camera?
Well, you know, I set the terms up so that I was safe in a sense. I went someplace where this didn't exist. I went someplace where I could experience the plate camera. You know, and it looked at what I looked at. It was where I was, you know. I didn't have anything, I didn't have this chaos to feel anxious about, you know, and I had no anxiety using that camera. And I think because this little camera taught me how to pay attention, you know, intensively. So you watch everything and you learn to drink it in. Now I was stuck without all this tumult around me. What I had to do was look and make action out of stillness in a way. I treated the plate camera as if it was something not as unwieldy as it appears. I put it on my shoulder, I took a walk with it. I saw something I like, I put down the camera, I took a picture. It was meant to be as fast as I said that. I wanted to treat it with the kind of instantaneity of the small camera, even though the rigors of the big camera, you know, offset that. I think that there's a way of combining the two so that they're not on a collision course, but that one enhances the limits of the other. Look at that. Stay close. Just watch their faces. They're kind of extremes. Look at that.
Joel, look at this guy with
yes,
the flowers.
look at
this guy with this cone of flowers.
Stay over me.
He's been standing here.
It's the girl. It's all those little teenage girls in the corner, and this guy in the middle.
This corner always has people giving things away. It always makes a clot.
Look how dense it is. Come on, come on.
So what's pleasing about looking at the pictures, even if I've been here on the day you made it?
Well, you know, it never looks like what, I mean, people walk alongside and you take a picture of something, they have no idea what it is you're taking a picture of, what you're interested in. It's chaos in front of you. Even when I'm walking with someone like Gary or anybody else on the street, they go like this, you're not quite sure what they're photographing.
Well, you and Gary and Todd used to go around together all the time, didn't you? And yet you always got completely different pictures.
Occasionally we didn't.
Is that why you quit going around together?
In part, you know.
Begin to feed into
what
each
happens
other's
is you begin to be
intuitions?
sympathetic, you're like a jazz group. And all of a sudden, you're in tune, you know, you're synchronous. And you make a picture, and they're making a picture at the same time, and it's all somehow verging. If you can put the three of them together, you get a panorama. You know?
Yes.
Look, two redheads. I actually don't like too much to sit and watch what goes on here because it's too much a given. Nothing's.
I know, but you know
it's
what's
hard to
nice
make
about
something
this is that they think that they're the audience and you're the show.
Yes. But still there's a wings, you know? Things come in from the outside.
Yes.
But you know what? It makes you too passive. If you sit and listen to the music for a while, you get a little sluggish and you don't make pictures about it. It changes your energy. The way my instinct is to get off this corner.
Okay.
Go someplace else. There you go.
That was the jungle.
Right.
Wait, did you hang out on corners right from the very first day? I mean, always, or did it take you a while to discover that the thing to do was to walk up and down the street? I mean, you got a camera. How did you know to get on the street with it?
Well, when I first went out on the street, it was just to get out of the office. And the street was the best place to be.
Well,
and it
what
was
were you
up and
doing?
down.
What were you doing?
Well, when I was working as an art director a long time ago. You know, when I quit that job, I wanted to be on the street. I wanted to be here at lunch hour, and I didn't want to go back in after lunch hour. I wanted to stay with the street, and I just wanted to feel myself out here. And I walked up and down the street. I didn't know about the corner because, you know, I was using
the faster film.
well, at that time, when I first started, I was using color, but I wasn't thinking about things in the way I'm thinking about it now. I was just making pictures of anything. Faces and close-ups. I was learning how to use the camera, and so I was trying to be aggressive and not be shy and somehow break that distance. I mean, now I can go up and stand next to anybody. You know, I can just go and stand next to somebody and feel like they're not going to hurt me. But I had to get to that place, and what I practiced doing in the early days was just standing out there and getting past that distance, that intimate distance.
Yeah.
You know, it took me years to discover that I should stand still for a while.
How do you decide when to stop, where to take up your position?
Like everything else, it's when you feel good. You know, you walk along the street and you're very nonchalant about the whole thing. I have no place to go. I'm out for a walk with you, right? And you come to a place where there's, you know, there's a funny guy, a big brute of a guy digging a trench on Fifth Avenue, and some trees popping out of a concrete square, and there's the Empire State Building, and there's the plaza over here, and it feels as if all the points are radiating some kind of energy, and the focus is right where you're standing. At that moment, it feels good there. Maybe you walk 10 or 15 feet, and the whole thing goes slack, and you don't make a picture. And so when it feels good, you stay there. You wait for the feeling to either become more intense or to evaporate. It's a way, it's testing the elasticity of your feelings. I mean, that's just like over here, it feels good to me. Just turn the camera around right now. Bing, you get that frame of that statue framed in that truck. I mean, look what this truck is like. What is this thing? Where's the missile this truck is supposed to be carrying? You know? And all of a sudden, some girl comes by eating French fries right here, and she just rubs her hair for a second. She melts into what it looks like. You know? It's the look of sunlight on hair, the kind of brittleness of those trees. Like, you know, a guy comes by, he clowns for you for a second. It's the vitality of people willing to be thought of as New Yorkers.
You know, I've seen pictures that you've made in Paris and Los Angeles, all over the place. The street different in New York? I mean, it's more crowded, maybe.
It is different. It is different. The pace is different. People's energy is different. It doesn't have the kind of... the scale of Paris streets is 5 stories high. Sandstone, warm, round, decorative, broad, slow. It asks you to slow down and be alert. New York City is steel and glass and chrome and marble and poured concrete, and the sidewalk glitters and the clothing and the hair goes, and people move fast. They move like the glitter. And when you're standing on the street in New York City, it's hot. It's emotionally hot. It's texturally hot. Physically, visually, I mean, it sings. I can photograph in Paris because I'm an outsider, but in New York, I understand what it means when it goes by. Oh, look what's going on in the street. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing right now. Yeah. Let me just see what they look like when they come, and then we'll head downtown. I watch them. I stand there and I just keep my eyes open, looking for things to happen. You know? Then my gaze, comes down, and I bring it around this way, and I just look to see what are these kids going to do here? Are they lost? Are they paying attention? And all of a sudden, in comes a girl being towed by a kid, kind of clumsy. You watch that. Birds are flying. The street's alive. There's a girl sitting down on that thing there. Her face is all kind of wrapped funny, I'm just looking all the time, just watching it and thinking it's all delicious. The street is delicious. It's something to suck. It bleeds its meaning to you very slowly. Just come this way here. Like that. There's a woman here, all in red. Boy, they were beautiful. You never know what's going to happen. Two people come down the street, and all of a sudden they're caught up in a swarm of other people, and it makes a new kind of sense. Nonsense, new sense, no sense. I like it. Beautiful.
Okay, stop for a minute.
Look, turn around, quick, turn around. Turn around, turn around, turn around. Let's end on that.
All right.
I think that was nice. Let's end on that.
When Joel completed work on Cape Light, he didn't stop spending his summers at the Cape, nor did he quit photographing there. Having begun with the landscape, he now turned his attention to the people in it. He turned to portraiture, and it was at that most recent part of his work that we looked when we left Fifth Avenue to go down to his studio.
Being out with that big camera and being excited by people and the flesh that they live in, as opposed to their clothing. One of the reasons I've been photographing, making portraits on Cape Cod, is that people are less dressed than on Fifth Avenue, for example. So I don't have any way of judging who they are by their outerwear. And so I find myself fascinated with what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And it happens that this gangly 15-year-old, teenager with wonderful curly red hair and freckles and a couple of scabs on her knee, she's still a little kid to me, And these women who are mothers and entering middle age are also fascinating to me. And as I look at the work, I've been putting it up on the wall the last few weeks, and I've begun to see that part of the argument for me is my fascination with women my age and with these almost untouchable teenagers, They're both at a kind of new beginning. Women in their 40s, whose kids are already grown and they're faced with their teenage daughters, see echoes of themselves, perhaps. And I find that that's been part of the substance of the pictures, part of the subject of the pictures. You know, it's not just young girls. The ages seem to span young middle-aged women and young girls, mothers and daughters, friends. I don't quite understand what I'm involved in yet. I see that there are definite leanings one way or the other. Pretty soon you discover that there's a subject underneath, you know, and it makes itself felt, and you're kind of blind to it until one day you look at enough pictures when the work is in front of you. You know that you've been hitting something.
There's a vein of ore that goes to the work. Right?
I made these pictures last summer when I was first somehow getting excited about making portraits. At the end of the summer, I noticed I had 20 redheads. I have no need for redheads. I mean, I didn't think I did anyway. I found out that there was a kind of gut reaction in the summertime. Their flesh was like looking at tropical fish underwater. You know, you do a little skin diving and you see this speckled thing hanging there in front of you and you're fascinated with it. You wish to get closer and really swim around it and look at it. Red complexioned people seem to be fantastic in summer sunlight. I mean, and I must have just taken note of it subconsciously and made photographs about them. Freckles turn green sometimes. The skin underneath has got pinks and whites and ivories, and their hair is kinky, and they seem to be almost a race apart. And I found that I had a kind of sympathetic reaction to them, and I made a number of pictures. I don't know what it adds up to. Maybe I'll get one good photograph out of it, or two interesting photographs. But I followed my instinct.
Where do you don't know these people. How do you get into that?
Where do I get off making pictures?
Exactly, exactly. You, a street photographer who plays his own games, now suddenly you're taking an interest in people as individuals in a way that's different, isn't it?
I think maybe at the very bottom of it all is the fact that the big camera tends to erase people. Look at all the Cape pictures. They're basically airscapes and seascapes and landscapes and portraits of houses and places, you know, the presence in a place. And St. Louis is the same thing, and the picture of the Empire State Building is the same thing. I love people. I mean, I've been on the street photographing people, and in a way, the big camera denied me that kind of access to them. When I made a 1-second photograph of the street, all I was left with was shoes and blurs on top. And it must be that I've come to a point working with that camera where I wanted human contact, and the only way to do it was to take the plunge into this kind of arm's length contract with somebody. Now that takes a lot of courage in a way. You know, I mean, on the street when you're working quietly with a small camera, you could snip away at the fabric of life and get lots of little portraits in there, but you never have to confront anybody and say, you, I need you.
There's quite a difference, isn't there? The difference in the cameras imposes on the photographer a difference in the way he behaves, and even thinks, as Joel has said. When he was a street photographer with the 35mm in his hand, he went out every day and accepted whatever the street offered him. He seldom looked for any one subject. He tried to be as open and varied in his response to the street as the hand camera permits. But with the view camera, which requires so much more premeditation in its use, there is bound to be more of a pattern. Cape Cod, where Joel first made pictures with the larger format in the summer of 1976, was a particular place in its particular season, a single, concentrated subject, in a way that the city never had been. Another subject that Joel began to pursue intensely was the Empire State Building. It had been a reference point popping in and out of his 35mm photography for years, but it became a separate project once he adopted the view camera. Then, when the success of the Cape pictures brought him a commission for a study of St. Louis, he did something similar to what he was doing in New York. He focused on Eero Saarinen's famous Arch for St. Louis, just as he had on the Empire State Building here. In addition to St. Louis, the Cape, and the Empire State Building, there have been other projects as well. One deals with pools by the sea, for instance. But in the end, despite the fact that the pictures now seem to come in discrete parcels, Joel still thinks of his photography as a single body of work, a continuous vision.
I try not to have a hierarchy of values about these photographs. Very simply, I'm sensitive to colored space and the envelope of light, enfolding things. I go around taking them in, passing them along. I think that's the most that anybody could ask for in the capture of their experience. It should just waft through you, a fragrance, effortless. You should be in tune in such a way that there's no resistance, whether you're making images, poetry, painting, music, or love. You should be totally enraptured by that, by the experience itself. That's what it's about, the location of subject. It's about passage of the experience itself in its wholeness, through you, back into the world. That's what artists do. They separate their experience from the totality, from raw experience, and it's the quality of their selections that makes them visible to the world.
On the day after Joel and I were on Fifth Avenue, I again went back down to his studio, where he was beginning to prepare for yet another exhibition. This one was to be a review of 20 years of his work at the Chicago Art Institute. Because the major view camera projects were projects, distinct bodies of work with their own beginnings, middles, and ends, they didn't require much new editing now. Inevitably, what Joel was drawn to in his preparations was the earlier, more open-ended part of his career. It was to the street photography and to the origins in it of his other work that I once again found him turning when I arrived back at his studio that afternoon. Why did you give up black and white? Is that it?
No, that's not the reason. There were other reasons, more about quality. You know, I'm also a child of this time, and I've grown up with John Sharkovsky's exhibitions and writings. Those are very important, you know. Robert's book was mute. All you could do was look at the pictures. John makes shows that are eloquent and varied, and he writes pieces that are enthusiastic and supportive of photography, of the whole act and enterprise of photography. It's not hard to be caught up in that and believe that you're part of that thing, that you feel that way also, that quality and description and you know, the various meanings of photography are, you know, large issues. Robert Frank wasn't talking about large issues of photography. He was making pictures, plain and simple. We're caught up in something else as well. It just makes it denser and wider, you know. And I think that this notion of the descriptive aspect of photography, that it's telling us about all the things that are in the photographs, got to me in some way. And I began to feel that something wasn't so telling. You know, things would fall away in the background. I almost had another view of what quality was. And one thing led to another, and color had a different kind of descriptive quality. It told more, it was more elastic, and I wanted it to be bigger. And before I know it, I arrived at using the 8x10 view camera. You know, it wasn't planned that way. I mean, it's shocking to me to consider what I'm doing with it. But I also trust that the lead is true, that photography has taken me that way, so it must be right. You know? And the fact that I can oscillate back and forth between the view camera and the small camera on the street is also an interesting experience. And maybe something will come of it. You know? I'm not afraid to think that something's building. I don't know if the show in Chicago of 200 pictures or so is going to crystallize that, but it has to set something in motion. By looking at 20 years of your own work, you've got to come to terms with what it was that you did, and who you are, and where you failed, and where you survived, and where your energies are. And I think now is the right moment for that.
Well, what responsibility do you feel for the older work? You know, one of the things that happens that I see this, I talk to a lot of photographers now, and I see this in a lot of careers. You produce so many images, and a lot of it's beautiful, and then you go on to new work, and it gets left behind. It really gets left behind, and if you don't put it out, it's never going to be put out. I'm not saying necessarily even that that's bad. Maybe it is just that a few images should come out of a great many, and then you go on to something else. But that book, which you put together now 5 years ago or more, has never been published. Are you anxious to see it published, or is it now something that was part of the past? And
it's the past. You know, I mean, I like the work. I think I learned something. It gave me the courage to do something else. But it's, you know, it's still a book. It would be nice if it was published someday, but I don't feel the heat anymore.
So let's look through the maquettes, which you did a few years ago.
Yeah. Well, you know, I started with a color picture. I was trying, when I put this together with you, I was trying to weave together the transition that I was going through. I wanted to make it true to myself, you know, put in the color pictures that were beginning to replace the black and white images. You know, this picture interests me a lot. The more I look at it, the more I think... It is, but the more I think I want it to be the cover or the first picture or something, because the book is called Still Going, in the sense of when someone says, "How's your car?" Still going. It means it's really falling apart, like me, but it's still going. And I always felt that that's what the picture of America was that I was trying to make, that it was still going. It was running in, you know, in trouble. It had a war on its hands. It had its own crisis in, you know, at home, and yet it was still going in some way. And that was the picture that I saw of it, that it was benign and somehow corrupt at the same time, and it was more sensuous on the surface. People, you know, people could act like that while they were being killed in Vietnam. People would be worried about their automobiles while, you know, we were defoliating thousands of acres of forest. I don't know if I could succeed in making that book, but that was on my mind at the time. It was the only word that I had to say about it. I see the link between the view camera pictures, not the portraits, but the general pictures of landscapes or cities and things like that. The kind of distance and overall description, edge to edge in the frame, the concern with making a picture about that is very much the same concern as making overall kind of photograph with the 35mm, rather than having a single incident, you know, pump the thing up. And I see that in a lot of the photographs I made, they were cool that way as well. You know what I mean?
They're not by cool.
No. Well, I think I was always interested in the place, the presence of a place, as well as the performers. And in fact, in many, I mean, look at that picture. In many photographs, you know, the person was reduced, and they existed in that space. I always had an urge to that big, deep space. I mean, here, look at that. I mean, just one after the other, at random. You know, I wasn't considering that as a question, but I was interested in the whole space. And this is a picture that's like 1971 or 72. As well as that, as well as that. And see, I guess I might have been subordinating that to these more aggressive, you know, engaged pictures of action, activity, and crowds close up. But I always loved that. You know, I remember feeling that I liked that and being curious about it, because I thought of myself as someone who always plunged in and did it real close. So the big camera satisfies that part of my attitude that's always been there, and I recognize it more clearly now. I also recognize that I am a person who likes to plunge in and be close and feel the heat, and I can use the small camera for that. You know? Listen, I'm getting antsy. I want to go outside and work a little bit. You know, I want to take a walk. The light's beautiful.
Let's go. Take this
Let's
monster.
pack this thing up. Yes, absolutely.
Good.
I just feel like shouldering my burden there and having some fun.
Walking
Use your company.
dusk nights would be nice.
Let's go. Anyway, it's beautiful to be out at this hour for me. You know, it's the best. It's just another time to work. The color that somehow gives gives the pictures a lot of presence. Look how beautiful this is right now, the way the light's glinting off, and just the way the light's glinting off the surfaces. Let's walk down here and see what we get.
You know, at this time of day, the pictures have got to be about the light as much as about anything else. You know, in the yesterday on Fifth Avenue, you've got the light to light the subject, but here the light really does.
Here the light is the subject.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting to move down here now and begin to study the neighborhood and feel out my interest in it. Little by little. I've only made a couple of dozen pictures so far, but I think that just like going to the Cape or St. Louis, you know, you begin to study and get involved in a place and you make pictures out of it. I like it here somewhere, you know, something feels right. I don't know what it is. Sometimes if you put it down, if you feel right, and you put it down, the picture is there. If you don't, you keep on walking. Actually, right now, look at these, even this kind of grimness of it in that light.
Yeah. I love these old buildings with the enormous double dormer windows. It's when nobody cared what it cost to heat a place.
That's how it feels for me, upside down. Good, Cody. It's a beautiful thing.
Let me see. Let me look at it. Again.
Oh my God.
It's wonderful.
Go back. Yeah, you're back over there. Careful for your back.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. I want to see the edges.
I think I just raise the front and get it over that truck, but there's something beautiful about the way that light up on top.
Are you going to read through the windows? Yeah.
Sure,
yeah,
sure. There's lots of stuff on the windows and in the windows and behind it as well. The arch down there. I think I just have to raise the front a little bit. 8 seconds. No, 8 seconds at F90, but I have to get off the street because the cars are going by. Thousand 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. I'm half the time. I always found that when I would count to 8, it would be 16 seconds. 1001, 1002. So I used the watch. Right, I just have to make some notes. 1 second.
You always write a verbal description of the colors in the scene as well.
Otherwise, you don't know if that's a warm gray or a cool gray in the shadow and how it relates to that. I mean, look at that light. It actually has a little yellow in it right now. If I don't know that, when I make a print of that, it's going to come out white light or pink light or orange light or blue light. It's got to know that it's a yellow gray. So, yellow gray in sunlight. I found this has been the most important part of making these photographs, is this kind of record keeping. I never made a record with the small camera because you just trust it's going to come out in the slide the right way. Once you have the big camera, you have a responsibility to making it right time after time. The only way people are going to believe that the thing looks like that is if you have an accurate record. I don't just mean a written record, but you're not cheating in any way. Those colors are as close as my description and memory can make me print. Otherwise, you might exaggerate everything, and no one will know the difference. I've seen too many, galleries that I've gone to, rotten color prints. And people say, oh, it's beautiful. They can't discriminate. I can. It's important to me that I have it right. But the color of that blue, I mean, look at that blue against the yellow right now. That's a kind of radiance. In an hour, it's going to be totally different, right? And 40 minutes ago, it was pearlier in some way. But it's a very special blue now precisely because it's in contrast to that yellow. What do I call that blue? Kind of like, it's a corner I've been passing a lot since I've been living down here. And every night I go home at this time, I see that. And I always feel there's something there for a photograph.
Is this the building was Wanamaker's department store?
I'm not sure. It sure looks big enough to have been a department store. Green windows down below. Let's go on. Come on, the light's too good, and if I don't move along, I'm going to miss something.